title of this ShowMe is Great Founders Steal, and it's really about designing for non-designers. And this is particularly interesting to me because I'm not a designer, and I've had to design a lot of things for my company. And let's take a step back and look at one of the most amazing things that's happened in technology over the last few years, and that is what people call the technology sort of commodity stack. Right? And that's just a fancy word for really cheap, sometimes free stuff that people have used to build on top of and build startups really quickly. So, we use, for example, EC2, Amazon's cloud server solution. We use, Google Apps for mail. We use, Skype for free phone service and conferencing and collaboration. So all of these things allow us to not have to build, servers from scratch, not have to build out our own mail system or our collaboration systems from scratch. It allows us to move a lot faster because we don't have to build all this stuff, and most importantly, a lot cheaper because we don't have to spend money on these custom solutions. So that's all well and good for technology, and in fact it's very good. I mean, it's really fueled a lot of startup growth the last few years. But what about for the non-technical stuff? Right? What about for design? Are there any resources, free or cheap, that help us sort of build and not have to reinvent the wheel every time, kind of build on top of existing designs? Well, the answer to that is pretty simple. It's every single website in the world ever. And that's a very powerful thought. That means that you can go to any website out there and you can borrow ideas. You can sort of learn from them and take knowledge and build it into your own site. Sometimes you can even take actual code from the HTML and CSS. It's actually pretty easy to do. So if you're building a video site, you might go look at Vimeo or YouTube, right? If you're doing a social networking site or stuff with a social networking component, you might look at obviously Facebook. You might look at LinkedIn, and all of these websites out there have spent tons of money, tons of resources getting to best practices, right? Developing these great designs, and they've done all that work for you, and your job then is to sort of borrow and incorporate it into your own website, right? Now, let's take a look at a very concrete example, and I'm going to show you that this is actually not just some kind of rogue thing that startups do, but something that even big companies do all the time. Right? So let's look at YouTube and just the very basic structure layout of YouTube. You have this big kind of space on the left for the video, and then a slightly narrower space on the right for all the recommendations. And the reason it's familiar is that it's actually, it's pretty common practice for video sites, for content sites, to do this. So I can compare this to a site like Vimeo. Right? So I can show you what that looks like. And when I pull that in, it's going to be almost exactly like YouTube. Right? You have the same kind of big video on the left. You have the little space on the right. And it's almost exactly proportional to YouTube's proportions. And what that tells us is that even bigger companies and more well-known designers borrow from each other all the time, and that's how we get to these things called conventions, right? These are things that sort of become standard practice on the web, and not only designers but users get a lot of benefit out of expecting the same kind of layout every time. So you have stuff like the header on top. You have on video sites, the video on the left and the recommendations on the right. And these are good. I mean, stealing you might think is a bad thing, but the conventions that come as a result are actually very good things. They help designers design much more quickly and develop ideas much more rapidly, and help users navigate without having to learn a new sort of framework every time they go to a new website. Now, the thing that's interesting is not just what the conventions that people borrow, but what people do with the conventions once they do. Now, let me show you this thing on the right here. This is the suggestions box, and this is pretty common across YouTube, Vimeo. Most content sites have these suggestions or recommendations, and what YouTube does is it recommends videos from other uploaders, and it's really about finding videos of similar topics. Similar topics. And so, you'll have a video uploaded by this guy, FPS Russia, and all these videos will relate to not the uploader, but the content itself. Right? So these are all related to the content. Well, if you look at Vimeo, you'll notice they take a little bit of a different view on this, right? So instead of recommending videos on the same subject, what they do is they recommend videos from the same artist, the same uploader. So you'll see Alberto Gomez and all his videos on the right. Now, what this tells us is that YouTube and Vimeo, although they have very similar visual structures, and they do take some of the same conventions, like doing the main video on the left, but there are certain elements that they customize to fit their own goals, right? And what we can do is start to take the visual designs and start to infer the goals that the YouTube and the Vimeo guys had in mind when they designed it that way, right? So with YouTube, the reason they're recommending videos on other topics, and not necessarily from the same videographer, is they just want you to watch more videos. And just keep watching them, right? Go on to the next one. When you're done with one, go on to the next video, right? Vimeo is very different. Vimeo is all about kind of self-expression, right? It's all about the artist. Whoops, I'm not going to be able to fit there, but it's all about sort of the portfolio concept. And when you watch a video from one particular artist, it recommends videos from the other artist to kind of showcase their talents. And so what we've done is we've taken the visual cues and we've really identified the goals behind each site. So what does that mean for you in designing your own startup, your own website? Right? It means to go the other way, to start from your goals, right? And then do what I call steal smart. Take all the ideas, take all the conventions that you see around you, but sort of adjust them to your own goals. And this way, you'll be able to create websites that have a clear focus, follow all the established conventions, but also are customized to your own goals and become much more effective. And you can start to stand on the shoulders of giants and do something even greater.